Tick tock. It is 9 in the morning. You have a single meeting scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. 6 massive hours of absolute freedom stretch out before you. Yet, you are completely paralyzed. You stare at a blank wall. You mechanically rearrange items on your desk. You actively refuse to start a new project, terrified you might get absorbed and miss the impending appointment. Your entire morning is brutally thrown into the incinerator. You curse your own laziness. You diagnose yourself with chronic procrastination. Stop labeling yourself a failure. You are not experiencing a collapse of personal discipline. You are trapped in a terrifying biological glitch known as waiting mode. Right now, your perception of time has been aggressively hijacked by your own endocrine system. The productivity gurus told you to simply block your schedule and force yourself to work. They are dangerously wrong. What if this maddening temporal paralysis is not a character flaw, but a highly expensive sentry protocol deployed by your nervous system? What if fighting this glitch with sheer willpower is the exact reason your energy is bleeding out? The modern capitalist machine has constructed an oppressive religion out of time management. They have ruthlessly commodified every ticking second of your existence. They indoctrinated you with the toxic illusion of seamless multitasking. They commanded you to divide your empty morning into perfect time blocks. They told you to set rigorous alarms and aggressively squeeze maximum financial value out of every single minute before your 3 o'clock appointment. You desperately attempt to comply with their rigid industrial standards. You open your laptop, you stare at the blinking cursor. You try to force your brain into a state of deep, meaningful work while your internal clock aggressively counts down the remaining hours. You demand your focus to sharpen. You command your hands to type. Yet, a heavy, agonizing cognitive fog completely paralyzes your higher reasoning centers. You end up aimlessly scrolling through your phone, nervously pacing around the kitchen and accomplishing absolutely nothing of value, feeling a crushing weight of moral failure. You genuinely believe that you're a defective, chronically unproductive adult. Stop letting an artificial corporate calendar dictate your biological worth. The mainstream productivity industry has sold you a devastating mechanical lie. When you attempt to force deep cognitive execution while intensely anticipating a fixed future event, you are actively committing biological sabotage. Your nervous system does not view your upcoming afternoon meeting as a casual calendar entry. It strictly categorizes that fixed appointment as an inescapable survival threshold. The motivational gurus who tell you to simply ignore the impending deadline and multitask are completely ignoring the unforgiving laws of chronobiology. Multitasking is a massive, scientifically debunked neurological myth. The human brain physically cannot seamlessly process a high-stakes future threat and execute a complex creative task at the exact same microsecond. When you violently try to combine these two conflicting states, your brain experiences a catastrophic context-switching cost. You're essentially slamming your foot on the accelerator while simultaneously pulling the emergency brake. The resulting thermodynamic friction destroys your cognitive bandwidth and completely melts your engine. Your inability to write that report or clean your house before the appointment is not a manifestation of chronic laziness. It is not an attention deficit disorder. It is the absolute, uncompromising refusal of a highly intelligent biological organism to lower its defensive perimeter. You must discard the toxic productivity handbooks immediately. You must claim your absolute immunity from this artificial capitalist guilt right now. You're not a procrastinating failure. You're a highly evolved biological machine suffering from an acute temporal mismatch. But to truly understand why your perception of time has completely shattered, we must strip away all the corporate advice and the heavy societal shame. We must completely bypass your conscious frustration. Put down the crushing burden of your unfinished to-do list. Pay very close attention to the shallow, restless rhythm of your breathing at this exact quiet second. We are going to look directly into the brutal, microscopic architecture of your stress response system. A very specific, highly potent chemical drip is secretly paralyzing your entire physical body. Drop the illusion of willpower. Your conscious mind is entirely helpless in this temporal hostage situation. A ruthless chemical clock is silently ticking beneath your skull. Let us zoom directly into the microscopic architecture of your stress response. In 2016, neuroendocrinology researchers at the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry mapped the human hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and uncovered a terrifying biological reality about anticipation. They proved that waiting is not a passive neurological state. It is an aggressively active, calorie-burning defensive protocol. You cannot simply meditate your way out of a physiological lockdown. Look closely at your biological clock. When you wake up knowing a fixed event exists at 3 o'clock, your brain instantly tags it. It does not see a casual Zoom meeting. It perceives an inescapable survival threshold. The HPA axis aggressively activates. It begins a brutal process of microdosing adrenaline into your fragile bloodstream, drop by drop, minute by minute. Your pupils slightly dilate, your resting heart rate elevates, your muscle fibers subtly tense. You are physically entering the anticipatory sentry mode. Your nervous system is mounting a massive invisible defense. Now watch the devastating internal logic unfold. If you start a complex creative task right now, your brain is terrified you will enter a state of deep flow. You might lose track of time. You might miss the upcoming survival threshold. So, the system violently intervenes to protect you. It actively suppresses your prefrontal cortex. It cuts the electrical power to your deep concentration centers. It forces you to remain hyper-vigilant, completely shallow, and physically paralyzed. This is your ultimate biological alibi. You're not a chronic procrastinator. You're not suffering from a lazy, defective personality. You're a highly advanced biological organism executing a flawless, wildly expensive military sentry protocol. Your brain is forcefully keeping you awake and strictly on guard to ensure you survive the impending temporal threat. It ruthlessly sacrifices your morning productivity to guarantee your absolute biological punctuality. The maddening restlessness you feel in your chest is entirely real. You're exhausted because you have been standing guard at a biochemical watchtower for 6 straight hours without moving an inch. But a chilling question remains. Why is this elite temporal defense system firing blindly at a completely harmless afternoon appointment? Why does your biological clock treat a simple digital calendar notification like an impending physical attack in the absolute safety of your quiet home? To understand this fatal mechanical glitch, we must look far beyond the adrenaline currently dripping into your veins. We must abandon the modern concept of corporate time entirely. We must rewind the genetic clock backward by 100,000 years. The terrifying answer is not hiding in your digital schedule. It is buried deep within the bloody, brutal survival algorithms of our ancient hunting grounds. Let us violently drag your perspective away from the blinking cursor of your digital calendar. We must hurl your consciousness backward across 100,000 years of brutal natural selection. Welcome to the unforgiving wilderness of the Pleistocene epoch. In this primal landscape, time was not neatly divided into productive corporate blocks. Time was measured exclusively in blood, daylight, and lethal encounters. Imagine an ancient tribal warrior anticipating a massive hunt or a highly probable predator ambush at dusk. How did their biology respond to this impending future event? Did they casually wander the forest collecting berries to maximize their daily productivity? Did they waste their precious metabolic fuel on meaningless, distracting tasks? No. They sat in absolute terrifying stillness. They entered a state of supreme energetic conservation. Their nervous system aggressively locked down all non-essential movements to hoard every single drop of adrenaline and physical power for the upcoming battle. Any distraction before the survival threshold was a guaranteed death sentence. Static, paralyzing anticipation was the ultimate biological weapon. You're the direct genetic descendant of those hypervigilant survivors. Your internal chronobiology is fundamentally coded by their ancient combat strategies. But here lies the devastating evolutionary mismatch. We took this flawless, life-saving sentry protocol, and we brutally forced it to synchronize with a trivial corporate spreadsheet. Over the last century, industrial society created the artificial concept of the mechanical clock. We built a highly unnatural environment where human beings are expected to constantly produce mechanical output right up until the exact second an appointment begins. Your DNA has absolutely no comprehension of a harmless afternoon video call. When your calendar alerts you to a scheduled event, your primal architecture assumes an ambush is imminent. It violently shuts down your creative centers to prevent you from being distracted. It forces you into the ancient conservation mode. You're not a lazy, disorganized failure struggling with simple time management. You are a biological anomaly suffering from a massive systemic collision. You're bringing the elite static defense protocol of a prehistoric apex predator into a humiliating battle against a modern alarm clock. You are being aggressively punished by a capitalist society simply because your neurological architecture refuses to be domesticated into a relentless factory machine. It is an evolutionary slaughter disguised as corporate efficiency. You were genetically programmed to freeze and conserve energy before a major life event. And the modern productivity empire has brilliantly weaponized that exact survival instinct to make you feel completely worthless. They engineered a psychological prison of constant output, and they boldly convinced you that your deep biological preparation is a shameful mental disease. But the ancient wilderness is gone. The prehistoric ambushes have turned to dust. The fossil record has served its grand purpose to completely absolve your guilt. Yet understanding this evolutionary tragedy does not automatically silence the painful paralysis you feel in your daily life. So, take a slow and deliberate breath. Let the overwhelming roar of human history completely fade into the background. We must put down the grand narratives of temporal warfare. Bring your heavy awareness back into this exact quiet room. Look at the dormant computer resting silently in front of you. The maddening paralysis in your chest is no longer a biological mystery, but we are standing at the absolute boundary of what historical data can do for you. Because right here, in this suffocating stillness, a much deeper and far more radical reckoning awaits. Listen to the slow ticking of the clock in this room. The grand timelines of human survival and the harsh mechanics of your endocrine system have finally finished their testimonies. We must leave the corporate planners and the cold laboratory behind. Drop the exhausting armor of trying to force yourself into relentless productivity. You have spent your adult life treating your temporal paralysis as a moral failure that needs to be disciplined away. You fought a phantom war against your own biological clock, constantly hating yourself for standing still while the world demands motion. But the endless pursuit of seamless multitasking is a sanitized and deeply toxic illusion. A mind that never pauses to defend its boundaries is a mind that has surrendered its capacity to survive. The freezing paralysis your brain generates is not a symptom of personal decay. It is the blazing spark of a sophisticated instrument actively protecting you from the unknown. Do not fear the imposing architecture of your own shadows. Here is your ultimate existential amnesty. Your ancient chronobiology violently separates your day into survival thresholds, but you no longer have to remain an apologetic prisoner of time. You are the conscious architect of this magnificent neurological sentry. Instead of desperately trying to shatter the waiting mode with forced labor, you can deliberately choose to accept the cost of its vigilance. This is the hidden switch of absolute human resilience. When the agonizing holding pattern begins tomorrow morning, do not run away in shame. Do not medicate your stillness with shallow self-loathing. Grant yourself the ultimate linear productivity exemption. Let the sentry stand guard. Watch the anticipation unfold in your body with cold precision. Let the quiet hours play out without forcing a single task. You're safely anchored in your room while your brain conducts the most intense defensive operation available to mankind. You are proactively hoarding vital biological energy for a threshold that demands your presence. By willingly occupying the center of this stillness, you are stripping the capitalist guilt of its paralyzing power. You are alchemically transforming chronic procrastination into an elite psychological armory. The painful restlessness in your chest is merely the sharpening of your cognitive blade against the whetstone of modern impatience. You survive the waiting room 1,000 times in the dark, so that when the event finally strikes, you are absolute stone. The evolutionary software of the century has been permanently loaded into your gray matter. The genetic code has given you the ultimate anticipatory shield. But the machine has no concept of modern schedules. It will entirely paralyze you if left unmanaged in the void. To bypass this, you must construct a fake temporal anchor, a deliberate mental boundary commanding the sentry to stand down until the precise hour arrives. The only element standing between being a helpless victim of your biological clock and becoming a master of your temporal fortress is the quiet intervention of your free will. Biology built the waiting room, but your conscious will must decide how the time is spent. The power to override the guilt is sitting right in front of you. Will you finally claim the heavy controls of your schedule, or will you let the shadow of the clock drive you blindly into exhaustion? You have commanded the sentry to stand down. The paralysis of the waiting room is finally over. But do not confuse a quiet morning with absolute cognitive victory. A perfectly managed schedule is entirely useless if the event itself secretly dismantles your neural architecture. While you mastered the temporal glitch of your ancient brain, a much darker mechanical error has been quietly destroying your output. The 3 o'clock meeting arrives, you enter the room, and perform flawlessly. You match their energy. You smile at the right moments. You mirror their exact social frequency. You believe you are simply communicating effectively. You're dangerously wrong. This is not communication. This is a severe biological hijacking known as masking. Your highly intelligent brain is forcefully overriding its natural processing to perfectly mimic the average crowd around you. This artificial synchronization requires a terrifying amount of neurochemical fuel. You survive the interaction, but when the door closes, your entire cognitive grid aggressively shuts down. You are drained, left as an empty husk. You are standing at a critical biological crossroads. Will you continue to burn your intellectual bandwidth to please the herd? Or will you accept the isolating burden of your unfiltered mind? Claim your stance. Commit to your choice in the comments below. Let the record show whether you choose the terrifying truth of your intellect or the comfortable exhaustion of the disguise. Accepting your brilliance is only the first step. To operate this machine, you must dismantle the camouflage. There is a brutal evolutionary cost to this subconscious imitation. We will dissect that exact mechanical flaw in the next video, but the question remains, how do you shatter this invisible mirror and finally cure the high intelligence masking curse?